Welcome to the Autistic Delicatessen.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. The food is great.
The food makes community. The food makes community.
What you eat and what you drink is your story.
Welcome to the Autistic Delicatessen. We are your hosts, Onikage and
Arnell.
Today is going to be a special episode. We'll be discussing about our guest soon. Are you looking forward to it, Larnell?
Oh yes, it should be very interesting. And plus, from our guests, it just seems that they have a lot of interest in food, though. So it'll be interesting to talk about that, though. So, only before we get into our guest, has there ever been a time to where you ever had food that's very interesting that you just thought, oh my gosh, I never thought it was going to taste like this?
Plenty of times. I think it's more so when things are homemade and you don't expect it to taste as good as it should. Whether you make it or your partner, friend, whoever you know makes it, and you're just like, oh wow, it tastes even better than like the packaged version you get from the supermarket or something. That's the only examples I can think of at the moment, but I've been getting a lot of that recently because my partner's been making a lot of things and I've been helping out with we both tried making pasta together, homemade pasta. We followed the whole basic ratios from our guest's YouTube channel, which we'll be discussing soon.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And also our guest is actually pretty known in the YouTube scene, so I hope you guys look forward to that.
Oh yes, definitely. Hopefully we can have some nice conversations and actually, be able to try out some new stuff. So definitely something right there to look at.
Today's guest is Ben Ebbrell from Sorted. Sorted started from a group of friends to a large community full of viewers and cooks alike. Sorted aims to cater to both beginners and foodies, and their content also provides recommendations from their viewers. Their YouTube channel provides various recipes that can make food easy to make. They also provide various food reviews and cook-offs with the addition of British humour. In the videos, they have 5 personalities: Ben himself and James, the cooks, and Jamie, Mike and Barry, the normals. Their brand has expanded to a podcast, cookbooks and even an app. Their website, sorted.club, also provides meal packs, recipes and recommendations on where to eat. Welcome to the Autistic Delicatessen, Ben. It's great having you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on.
Could you explain how Sorted first came to be?
Yeah, it's really been one of those sort of happy accidents. It started over 10 years ago, quite literally just sharing recipes between a group of friends. So I was training to be a chef and I was sharing recipes with the guys you see on screen now. I've known them for over 20 years, but it was while we were at uni that we would share simple, easy recipes, literally on the back of a beer mat. And then from there, we realized it was literally more than just those of us around a table who would find these recipes useful. And it kind of spread and expanded using social media platforms that were pretty new at the time. And we've kind of stuck with it. And fast forward 10 years, we're now, across sort of all the social platforms you'd expect: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and having this ongoing conversation all around food. And it all started from just that first idea of just sharing recipes, really.
That's kind of interesting. Now, I was watching one of the Sorted videos, and one of the interesting thing was when you had the TikTok food trends. I think this was from one of the videos that one of the people actually opened up like canned foods, and what came out was like a trekking hamburger, and you had to do stuff with chicken and all that stuff. So, how do you usually find those cans, though? Was it just like one of you just went out to a local grocery store or whatever you call it in the UK and just found it or ordered it?
Yeah, it's always a nice mixture. I think one thing that Sorted's always been very good at is the fact that we have an audience watching from all over the world, so community from everywhere. They're always making lots of suggestions. So quite often people will send us links to cool things that we should check out and try out, and in which case we'll go online and order them. Sometimes when we travel, one of my favourite things to do when I travel, especially abroad, albeit no travel this year as such, but is to go into other supermarkets when you're traveling. What are supermarkets like in other parts of the world? Because there's always fascinating things that catch your eye. So we just gather all these over time, and they come together to be part of a conversation. And we always, before we film something, we like to think there's a nice balance of things we'll talk about so that it's not too heavily skewed one way or the other. And then they all come together. So it really is a mixture. We find stuff from all over the internet, all over the community, and when we travel ourselves too.
Funny enough, that's one of my favourite things, as mundane as it sounds, is go to different supermarkets. Even though it's just the same chain, they always have different layouts and different foods, and the bigger ones have more selection. It's like going to Lidl. It's like there's always something different in each Lidl, and you can't get the same thing every time. And even though I've not travelled overseas, I'd love to see overseas restaurants. And even if I just watch YouTube videos, it's like, oh, that's so cool.
And you have to constantly make a list of things you want to check out and try, otherwise you forget. And you've got to keep lists. I'm definitely one that's got lists all over the place of things that I might have seen weeks ago and we might not do on the channel for weeks or months to come, but at some point it'll be really interesting. So yeah, always keeping lists of things that are useful and interesting.
Oh, I definitely. I have like lists everywhere, even just like things to buy for a weekly food shop. Like sometimes I want to get one experimental thing for my partner because he cooks, so it's just like, oh, we'll get like this special spices or something, or for him to try, and he usually makes something great of it.
Always got to keep the experimentation up. And if you think about it, we've been doing Sorted for over 10 years. We've done over 1,500 video recipes, and you think of all the cookbooks we've done, and there's 50 or 60 recipes in each one of those. And the great thing is you never run out of ideas. You can always keep experimenting, keep mixing things up and coming up with new stuff all the time. So yeah, never stop doing that.
So Ben, who came up on your YouTube channel, the whole thing with the chefs and the normals? And what are the normals? Are the normals kind of like people who are not chefs that just basically just cook recipes, but they haven't had culinary experience? Is that why that was established?
Yeah, exactly that. So we've always said that, it started the channel all that time ago with myself and then Jamie, Barry and Mike, who were not chefs. And the whole point was it was kind of they were going to ask the questions that people at home would be wanting to ask, because chefs sometimes get carried away with certain language, technical language, things that they've been taught, classical cuisine or whatever. And they would always try and sort of bring it back down to a inverted commas normal level. And it becomes quite a bit of a running joke that, chefs don't think in particularly normal ways, and therefore you need someone to represent the everyday person. Over the years, the boys have got very, very good. I wouldn't say they're particularly normal now either, because they're so good in the kitchen. But that's basically the idea of it. Yeah, exactly that. Some with culinary experience and some without.
Ah, okay, interesting. Yeah. And it's the same way how I saw also a video that you both tried to cook out of a cookbook from 1914. And it didn't really have kind of like what you find in modern day cookbooks in terms of like how much you put in there and all that stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but you also did something with animal's tongue.
Yeah, we did it with a cow's tongue, and just we should all try, and if we are meat eaters, we should all try and eat different parts of meat and make sure we're using the maximum sort of benefit of the whole animal. And that was something that was very, very traditional. I think when cuisines first started, it was all about how can you use every element so nothing goes to waste. And I think over the years we've become a bit more selective and we pick the best bits that we like. But this cookbook that you mentioned from 1914, it was much more celebrating the whole animal, all the different cooks, the cheap cooks, the celebratory cooks. And yeah, we had a go at cooking them up. They weren't easy because they weren't recipes as such. There was just lots of things you were presumed to know, and we had to kind of join the dots.
One of the series you guys do, there's quite a few, but one of them that stands out at the moment is is food pretentious? That the series where you review various things if food is pretentious or not and guessing the price range. And I just find that a lot of fun, especially how I run a tea blog, and when I follow other foodies and that, occasionally I see something that's considered pretentious, especially when it comes to like tea, like your very expensive brands, and you're just like, why is that so expensive? And I also discovered things like kombucha and cold brew before they got big as well.
Yeah, and I think again you just have to keep an eye on all the blogs, because it's often the blogs and the people who are passionate and interested in food that come across these things first, and then you have to sort of wait for it to slowly take hold, and then it becomes the foodies that particularly like it, and then it gets into a few TV programs, and before you know it, it's kind of mainstream, and you find them in the supermarkets. But if you're interested in food, you tend to come across them quite a bit earlier than that, which is nice.
So Ben, like what American dishes if you ever done American dishes on your channel. Probably you have. But what types would you like to try, or what types of cookbooks would you like to try that are very interesting, or something from America?
So we've been very lucky that we've travelled across parts of America previously, and we're always amazed at the people and the passion behind the food and the stories, and that's the part that we love most. And for that reason, what I love doing is going back in time, back in history, to find out, where all these sort of dishes originally started from.
Mhm.
And we did that when we were in places like New Orleans, incredible music scene, food scene, and some of the dishes there. Hearing the stories of how they came to be, and why Café du Monde, the coffee is made with chicory, and how the beignets are so popular and why. And I love all that kind of exploring the stories and the history behind the dishes, not just the dishes themselves. And sometimes we have recipes. So chicken and waffles, for example.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. But when we first went to America, we couldn't get our head around it. It was confusing for us because we'd never put fried chicken with waffles. In our
Yeah.
minds,
Yeah.
it's an odd combination. And it's not until you try it, you realize it's got that sweet, it's got the savor, it's got the crunch, it's got the fry, everything about it is awesome. And
Yeah.
then you try and find even better versions of that classic combination. And that's good fun, just to constantly seek out better alternatives.
Because really, in America, Ben, there's so many different types of cuisines and types of styles of making food. Because even for me, like being from originally like South Florida, or being in the region of Florida here in the States, it's like Southern people cook differently than people from like Boston, or they like do oysters or clam chowder. I don't know if you ever tried clam chowder on Sorted though, but that's what people around Boston, around the eastern area of America do. And then here down south, like we do more of like the fried southern type stuff, even within like Black Americans and how they do their foods or something like that. I don't know if you ever covered that though.
We have to some extent, and I love the fact that food travels. We did we did clam chowder on the West Coast, kind of in San Francisco, which is very different clam chowder on the East Coast, and yet it's by name the same dish. And that's what's really interesting to see how these things change across states and across the country.
What is your favourite food?
Ah, so that's a really difficult question, because for me as a chef, I love to cook for other people,
Yes.
and therefore often it's not about me. So I like to think about who I'm cooking for, and then find out what their favourite is, and that becomes my favourite.
That makes so much sense. It's like my partner, he cooks for other people, not for himself. And even though I'm not much of a cook, when I do make things for other people, like occasionally mac and cheese and that, I make sure it's tasty for everyone else and make it look nice, great presentation. But when it's just for myself, I just slab it on a plate. There you go. For myself.
It's true, and I think that's why midweek cooking sometimes people don't put enough effort into, because you get home from maybe work or a busy day or a long day or whatever, and the last thing you want to do is spend too much time cooking, especially if it's just for yourself or just for you and your partner or you and your family. But actually, I think midweek cooking is some of the most important cooking, because it's basically what we live off 80% of the time. So we have to really try and be creative and kind of do inspiring things that are nutritious, cheap, affordable, and things that keep us interested in food. So actually, midweek cooking is probably the most difficult, to keep coming up with new ideas.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite dish that you like to cook, that as a chef, or even like from culinary school at uni or university in the UK, that you've enjoyed cooking?
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with Japanese ramen a few years ago, and I still say absolutely love it. You have to go to quite a bit of effort to get it absolutely right, because it's a long, slow kind of cooking of the broth. But when you get it right, it is quite literally the most comforting dish and bowl of food with these steaming noodles and the incredible broth. It always puts a smile on my face. So if I'm being selfish and cooking something for myself that I love, then I think it will probably be ramen.
Ah,
Yay.
interesting. Like ramen noodles. Okay.
I love ramen, and I always appreciate a proper ramen instead of just like the packet stuff. Like in a Japanese restaurant, proper broth, proper noodles, just the whole experience, and it fills you up for hours. You don't need to eat for ages. It's one of the best hearty meals, in my opinion, and I love noodles in general. So
Yeah. And especially when you're eating out, you've got the luxury of those big bowls you might not have at home and things like that, which makes it all part of the experience. And it's a reason why actually again, at the studio, we've got all sorts of different crockery and cutlery and things, but it always tastes better out of a ramen bowl or a big bowl, as opposed to what we might have at home, like a cereal bowl. So there's always those little extra touches that are difficult sometimes to do at home, but much easier when you're out and about celebrating great restaurants that are doing it so well.
I agree. It's also the same thing with drinks. It's like tea. It always tastes better with a proper mug. This is like a China mug, and it just tastes so much better. Even with like traditional green tea mugs as well, and things like that. It's just, as you say, a proper ramen bowl with ramen in it just tastes so much better. It makes so much of a difference. It's amazing.
We have the holidays coming up, so you were mentioning offhand about like making some Christmas dishes. So like is there going to be a special sorted to where people can see special Christmas dishes or holiday dishes that you like, or holiday favorites or creative holiday favorites?
Yeah, so we always sort of plan the content that we're doing a few sort of weeks or even months ahead. So we're already thinking ahead to Christmas. And for us, that will be Christmas content on the channel. So yes, we'll do some cool recipes, but also we do some fun kind of like Christmas food gift reviews of what's out there that's really cool. If you're stuck for ideas for buying presents for friends or family and they're foodies, then some ideas that we can provide for that. But also in our sorted packs. So people who are following along and cooking using the tools that make sort of midweek cooking much easier, we're going to make sure we've got some kind of seasonal ideas there as well, because everyone should be able to enjoy great kind of little touches that just make a big difference when it comes to that festive dinner.
The thing that you always seem to find, Ben, I don't know if it's the same for you or something like that, is that whenever you go to a Christmas party, this was like pre-COVID or something, or even during COVID, you tend to find fruitcake a lot. It, people tend to always have fruitcake, at least in my case, living in the US or something like that, from some family members. So has it been the same for you or something like that at times?
I think there's definitely a few flavors and items that you almost don't feel like it's Christmas without. And I think fruitcake or Christmas pudding, mince pies, all of those things that use the wonderful spices with the dried fruit, the cinnamon, the clove, the star anise, those flavors you also get in things like mulled wine. It's those kind of warming flavors that we love because it gets cooler outside. We're into winter. Everyone wants to kind of like get cozy and in the living room with friends and family, and you've got the fire going, and those spices you find in fruitcake, in mince pies, in Christmas pudding, that's, I think, just iconic when it comes to Christmas flavors.
Ah, okay.
Before we end things off, where can we find you sorted in social media?
So we've kept it nice and easy. It's Sorted Food everywhere. So SORTED Food on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And if you want to find out what we get up to in the club as well and get sort of involved in all the packs, and it's free for everyone for the first month, then you go to sorted.club.
That's fantastic. Well, Ben, it was great having you here in the Autistic Delicatessen.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching the Autistic Delicatessen.
If you want to check out more of our episodes on our podcast as well as our videos, please go on to the autisticdelicatessen.card.co. It's right at the bottom, easy for you to see.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for future content.
And until next time,
What you eat, what you drink is your story.